I never thought I'd post here, but my life completely unraveled in just a week, and I need to put this somewhere. My notes app is overflowing, and my only friend left is tired of hearing it. I met Eric 4 years ago at a wildlife rehabilitation center. It wasn't a romantic setup. Both of us were there for community service. Mine was for a speeding ticket. His was for something he never really explained. We got stuck with the overnight bottle feeding shift that nobody wanted. At 3 a.m., we were both half asleep, struggling with a baby fox that wouldn't take the bottle. I was ready to call the supervisor when Eric started humming a tune. Instantly, the fox calmed down and started drinking. Later, he told me his grandma taught him the song to soothe animals on her farm. We stayed up talking until sunrise and exchanged numbers. Back then, he was sweet, sending me random animal facts and links to nature documentaries. Our relationship wasn't perfect, but that's normal. The biggest problem was his mom, who made it clear from the start she didn't think I was good enough. She criticized everything: my looks, my messy bun, the way I loaded her dishwasher, even my career choices. Eric always defended her, saying she meant well and that I should try harder. For 4 years, I did. Thoughtful gifts, remembering birthdays, listening to endless stories. Nothing worked. But aside from her, we had a good rhythm. We made each other breakfast on weekends, had favorite shows, shared inside jokes. He held me when my cat died, brought me coffee in bed just the way I liked it. We had even talked casually about kids, though neither of us was in a rush. So when my period was late and I felt sick every morning, I didn't immediately think pregnancy. After 2 weeks of feeling awful, my friend Sandy suggested I take a test. I bought a digital one because I didn't want to squint at faint lines. Wednesday morning, it was clear. Pregnant. I took another to be sure. Same result. I sat on the bathroom floor for an hour trying to process it. It wasn't planned, but it wasn't a disaster either. We were stable enough, financially and otherwise. I decided to tell him on Saturday by making his favorite breakfast. I rehearsed the words over and over. Saturday came. I made everything perfectly. Then his mom showed up, unannounced, using the spare key. Another red flag I had ignored. She sat with us like it was normal. I placed the food on the table, hands shaking, and finally held out the test. Eric looked up from his phone, annoyed, not surprised. His exact words: "Abortions are quick. Bad timing as always." His mom added that he finally realized I wasn't attractive, wasn't smart, and was just a burden. That was it. 4 years, dismissed in seconds. I quietly set the test down, washed my face, grabbed my wallet and phone and left. No bag, no clothes, nothing else. I walked until my feet hurt, then ended up in a coffee shop, nursing a chai latte for hours. Eventually, I called Sandy, who let me stay on her floor. Her place was small and crowded, but it was better than the street. On day 5, I found a job washing dishes at a cafe. The owner, Vicky, didn't ask questions, just told me to show up. The pay was low, but it was something. She didn't judge when I got sick during shifts, just handed me ginger candy and pointed to the mop. Meanwhile, Eric started texting. At first, casual messages, then desperate ones. Calls from different numbers. Voicemails saying he panicked, that his mom got in his head, that he loved me. Too late. I smashed my phone against a wall. Vicky didn't blink, just handed me a broom. But Sandy was growing tired of me staying with her. I understood. I was taking up space, using her things, even if I tried to help. Then one night, Eric was in her apartment. She looked guilty. He looked desperate. I walked out and ran until I couldn't anymore. finally sitting in a laundromat all night, watching strangers live their normal lives. That's where I am now, still at Sandy's for the moment, still working at the cafe, still pregnant. Eric keeps trying. Messages, calls, even flowers at work. Vicky threw them straight in the trash. I don't have a plan yet. I'm just taking things one day at a time. But I know this much. I'm not going back. Not to Eric, not to that apartment, not to that life where I was never enough. Update. Thanks to everyone who supported me after my first post. I spent that night in the laundromat, my back aching from those plastic chairs. By morning, I finally went back to Sandy's, hoping Eric was gone. He was, but Sandy was upset. She felt I had betrayed her trust by showing up after she told him I wasn't there. From her view, it seemed like I was dragging her into my mess. She wasn't wrong. She didn't kick me out, but she made it clear I needed to figure something out soon. I promised I would. At work, Vicky noticed my state and quietly left a towel and travel-size shampoo in the staff bathroom. That nearly made me cry. That same day, I finally called my mom. We hadn't spoken in months. She's always been critical, and I've always felt like a disappointment. I rushed through everything before she could interrupt. She sighed and said it was typical of me to end up needing help. She wasn't surprised Eric left me, though technically I left him. Still, I swallowed my pride and asked if I could stay with her and my dad for a while. I never thought I'd be sharing something like this, but here we are. After everything that's happened, I need to put it somewhere. My notes app is overflowing, and the one friend still speaking to me has already heard too much. After my last post, things only got harder. I called my mom, hoping for help, and she said she'd need to talk to my dad. She promised to call me back, but 2 days passed with nothing. On the third day, she finally texted. They had decided it wouldn't be healthy for me to move in, but she could send grocery money if I really needed it. That was the extent of her support. Meanwhile, things with Sandy were falling apart. I tried so hard not to be a burden, barely using her bathroom, eating the cheapest food, staying at the cafe as long as possible. But in a tiny studio apartment, there's only so much space to disappear into. Then I got sick, really sick. Not just morning sickness, but unable to keep anything down. I spent one night on her bathroom floor, too weak to move, hoping not to wake her. In the morning, she found me there. Something in her shifted. She called Vicky to say I couldn't work that day, then made me a tea her grandmother swore helped nausea. She even sat with me while I sipped it. That night, I admitted to her that I didn't think I could handle this, that I could barely care for myself, let alone a child. She told me nobody is ever truly ready for parenthood. People just figure it out as they go, even the ones who seem like they have everything together. It was the first kind conversation we'd had in days. The sickness lasted nearly a week. I lost weight I couldn't afford to lose. Vicky kept my job for me, but without pay, my savings disappeared into crackers and ginger ale. When I finally started feeling better, Sandy sat me down. She said we needed a plan. I couldn't stay with her forever, but I couldn't be pregnant and homeless either. She opened her laptop, and together we looked up resources, shelters, healthcare, assistance programs. I had been avoiding that step, but she was right. I needed help. We found a shelter for pregnant women. They had a 6-week maximum stay, but offered support in finding long-term housing. I called the next morning, and they had a spot opening in 3 days. I took it. Those days were a blur of applications. Medicaid, SNAP, housing assistance, WIC. It was humiliating, putting everything down on paper, but I did it. Vicky even gave me lighter work at the cafe and made sure I ate. One night, she sent me home with soup. The day before I was set to leave, Eric showed up at the cafe. I was wiping tables when I saw him at the door, unshaven, tired, wearing that old hoodie of his. Before he could reach me, Vicky intercepted him, arms crossed. She told him I wasn't there and threatened to call the police if he didn't leave. I slipped into the back while he called my name, and eventually the doorbell chimed as he walked out. When Vicky came to check on me, I was sitting on a crate, trying to breathe. She didn't comment, just handed me a broom and told me the front needed sweeping. That night was my last at Sandy's. She even bought me a cupcake as a small goodbye gift. I told her I was sorry for being such a burden. She said I wasn't a burden, just temporary chaos. That's what friends do sometimes, carry each other's chaos when things fall apart. The next morning, I packed my few belongings in a plastic bag and went to the shelter. From the outside, it looked like any old house. Inside was different. Security cameras, keypad locks, strict rules, curfew at 9 p.m., no visitors. Evelyn, the woman in charge, showed me my space. A twin bed, small dresser, shared bathroom. It wasn't great, but it was safe. That first night, I lay in bed listening to the sounds of strangers, crying, quiet voices, a baby somewhere down the hall. For the first time since leaving Eric, I cried too, loud, messy, into my pillow. In the morning, Evelyn slid a folder across the table. A prenatal clinic, free pregnancy classes, housing applications. "You've got 6 weeks here," she told me. "Make them count." So I tried. I went to my first prenatal appointment and saw my baby on the ultrasound, 10 weeks along, healthy. I got a part-time job stocking shelves at a grocery store, early mornings before the cafe. The pay was better, but the hours were rough. Between both jobs, I was constantly exhausted, but I was saving. Eric kept trying to reach me, even showing up at the grocery store. My manager told him to leave. Then one night, my mom called. Rare for her, she'd run into Barb, who told her I had trapped Eric by getting pregnant on purpose and had vanished with his child. My mom wasn't sure what to believe, so she asked me. I told her everything exactly as it happened. After a long pause, she said 3 words I'd never heard from her before. "I believe you." It wasn't a full reconciliation. She didn't invite me home or apologize, but she asked if I needed anything. I said grocery money would help. She promised to send some each week. Not everything I hoped for, but it was something. By week 3, Evelyn told me there was an opening in a transitional housing program. 6 months of subsidized rent in a small studio apartment. Not perfect, but private and safe. I applied, interviewed, and tried not to get my hopes up. Meanwhile, life at the shelter wore me down. The noise, lack of privacy, constant rules, and the countdown clock of my 6-week stay. I was 16 weeks pregnant now, starting to show, exhausted, hungry, and struggling to keep up with work. One day, after nearly passing out at the grocery store, I sat in a park watching kids play. My phone rang with an unknown number. It was Eric. I should have hung up, but I didn't. He said he'd been in therapy, that his mom had poisoned him against me, that he panicked when I showed him the test. He apologized over and over. I let him talk. Then I asked one question. Did he mean what he said that morning? He admitted he had. He said he was wrong, but scared. I told him honesty didn't change anything. I was building a new life without him, and needed space. He asked if I'd at least tell him when the baby was born. I said I'd think about it, then hung up. The next day, I got the call. I'd been accepted into the transitional housing program. A tiny studio, but mine. Safe. I called Sandy, who cheered. I called Vicky, who just said, about time. Then, surprisingly, I called my mom. She said she was glad, even offered to help me move. I said no, but thanked her. My last night at the shelter, a quiet girl named Skylar gave me a small gift, a yellow onesie with ducks, the first thing anyone had given me for the baby. I cried. The next morning, I packed up, including that little onesie, and moved into my new place. The apartment was small, but it had a locking door, my own bed, and a table. Evelyn gave me a welcome basket with basics, then left me to settle in. For the first time, I had stability. 6 months to plan. I made a list of everything I needed to do. Find a doctor, look for a better job, get a crib, save money, figure out childcare. It was overwhelming, but at least I had time now. That night, I got a text from my mom. She'd sent $400 with a note, for whatever you need. More than she'd ever given me at once. Maybe people really can surprise you. I found a secondhand dresser on Facebook Marketplace that someone was giving away. Picked up some dishes from the dollar store and slowly started making the apartment feel like home. My mom kept sending money every couple of weeks. Not much, but enough to help. We began talking more, awkward calls where neither of us knew what to say, but we were trying. She even drove down once with a bag of baby items she'd collected at garage sales. She didn't stay long, just dropped them off, and we had a short coffee together at a cafe down the street. But it meant something. At 20 weeks, I had my anatomy scan and learned I was having a girl. The tech asked if I wanted to send the pictures to the father, and I shook my head. She didn't push. Afterwards, I sat in my car in the hospital parking lot for an hour, staring at those grainy black and white photos. A daughter. It made everything feel real in a way it hadn't before. Eric hadn't contacted me in weeks, keeping his promise to give me space. I felt both relieved and, strangely, a little irritated. After all the effort he made to find me, it was like he just stopped, which didn't make sense since that was exactly what I'd asked for. By 25 weeks, the pregnancy was harder physically. My back ached constantly, and I rarely slept more than a few hours. The grocery store job became too much. Standing that long made my feet swell painfully. I had to quit, which meant less income, but my body couldn't take it anymore. Fortunately, Vicky offered me more hours at the cafe, mostly sitting tasks like food prep. She even sent me home with leftovers most nights, which helped a lot. I got to know some neighbors at the transitional housing complex, mostly other single moms or women rebuilding their lives. One woman, Lydia, lived a few doors down with her 2-year-old. She noticed me struggling with laundry one day and stepped in. Soon, she was checking in regularly, sometimes bringing dinner. She became my first real friend since everything fell apart. One night at her place, I saw she had a lot of baby gear her toddler had outgrown. She explained she volunteered at a community center that helped new moms. The next day, she took me there, and they gave me a portable crib, clothes, diapers, and even a baby carrier, all free. I cried right there in the donation center. At 30 weeks, I got a text from Sandy saying she'd run into Eric at a friend's birthday. He asked about me, and she told him I was managing. She said he looked rough. I didn't reply, not knowing how to. Around the same time, my dad unexpectedly called. We hadn't spoken in over a year. He was nervous, clearing his throat often, and said Mom had told him everything. He apologized for not being there and said they wanted to help once the baby came, maybe visit for a few days. I was skeptical. My dad had never been supportive. But he sounded different, less harsh, more hesitant. I told him I'd think about it. At 34 weeks, Eric's mom posted a long Facebook rant about missing her grandchild and selfish mothers keeping babies away. She didn't name me, but everyone knew. Friends sent me screenshots. One acquaintance from college even messaged me, saying she was disgusted by the post and offering to bring dinner. I was furious, but chose not to respond publicly. Instead, I blocked Barb and anyone who supported her. The next day, Eric called. He apologized right away, said he had nothing to do with his mom's post, and told her to take it down. Then, he carefully asked if he could be there for the birth. I told him no, that I needed that time for myself. I said we could talk about visitation afterward, but if he wanted to prove he could be a father, he needed to respect my boundaries now. He was quiet, then agreed, asking only to be told once the baby arrived. I said I'd let him know after, not during. I thought a lot about what role I wanted him to have. Some days, I leaned toward no contact. Other days, I considered shared visitation. Lydia shared her own co-parenting experience, saying it was difficult, but worthwhile for the child. She said the key was to treat it like a business relationship, focused on the kid, not the past. It made sense, though it felt daunting. At 37 weeks, I thought labor had started and rushed to the hospital at midnight. It turned out to be false labor. The doctor reminded me that first babies often come early, so I needed a plan. Mine was simple: get myself to the hospital and deliver alone. Lydia insisted no one should face that alone and volunteered to be my support person. I eventually agreed. Meanwhile, I worried about what came after. My transitional housing would end when the baby was about 3 months old, and I had no long-term solution. Affordable housing wait lists were years long, and my savings were minimal. My parents now called weekly. It was still awkward, but better. They offered again to visit when the baby came, and this time I accepted. I couldn't refuse help. At 39 weeks and 4 days, my water broke. At the cafe of all places, Vicky looked down at the puddle, then at me and said, "Time to go." She called Lydia, who picked me up, and we headed to the hospital. Labor lasted 22 hours, exhausting and overwhelming. But at 6:17 a.m., my daughter was born. 6 pounds, 3 ounces, with a full head of hair. They placed her on my chest, and she looked at me like she already knew me. I stayed in the hospital for 2 days. I half expected someone to stop me from leaving, but instead, they handed me discharge papers and sent me home. My parents arrived the next day. My mom immediately took charge: laundry, meals, holding the baby while I showered. My dad was hesitant at first, but by day 3 could soothe her better than anyone. I texted Eric a photo and basic details. He replied with long, emotional messages I wasn't ready to process. So I told him I'd reach out later. Those first 2 weeks were a blur of sleepless nights. My parents stayed nearly 2 weeks, helping more than I expected. Before leaving, my dad told me they had a rental house coming available soon and offered it to me at minimal rent. He said becoming a grandfather made him realize how much he'd failed as a father, and this was his chance to do better. I accepted. We planned to move when my daughter was 2 months old. It meant leaving the city I'd started rebuilding in, but it offered stability and space. Early motherhood was tough. Breastfeeding was painful, so I switched to formula by week 3, after my doctor reminded me fed is best. My daughter barely slept at night, and I paced the apartment, watching endless Netflix episodes while rocking her. At 4 weeks, I let Eric meet her in a neutral place. He held her gently, memorizing every detail of her face. We had our first real conversation about boundaries, visitation, and his mother. He promised to visit regularly, even driving 3 hours each way. We agreed on a temporary schedule, every other weekend visits for a few hours. He didn't push for more. When I told him her name, Lily Grace, he teared up and said it was perfect. At 6 weeks, Vicky threw me a small farewell party at the cafe, surprising me with cash the staff had collected, enough for a proper crib. Lydia helped me pack, promising to visit. Before leaving town, I stopped at the shelter. Evelyn hugged me and told me she was proud of me. Those words mattered more than she knew. We moved into my parents' rental house, a small 2-bedroom with a yard. Modest, but after months in a studio, it felt huge. Neighbors welcomed us with cookies. Lily is now 4 months old, smiling and grabbing at everything. Eric visits as promised, brings essentials, and leaves when I ask without complaint. His mom once tried to push her way in, but he made her leave when I refused. It's not perfect. I'm still exhausted, still cry sometimes, still unsure if I'm doing everything right. But when I look at Lily, I know walking out 8 months ago was the hardest and best choice I've ever made. The future is uncertain, but for now, we're okay. Just taking it one day at a time. Thanks for listening, strangers. Your support has meant more than you know.